Greetings friends, subscribers, and greetings to you who may have just stumbled onto this video. Jamie here, and this video is a bit off the beaten path, but we're convinced that it's all connected. When our producer was a young man just starting out as a so-called adult, he was given a few books to read. Among the selection was Animal Farm, 1984, the Book of Proverbs, and The Art of War. Now, about this time, there was a movie that came out and swept the popular media like monsoon. Our producer also finds it quite interesting that the film was released in the same year that the Million Man March happened, almost like a wet blanket to smother out a fire. But it's cheap and easy to do revisionist history, so we'll refrain from digressing. The point was, just as our producer was sucking on the bitter lemon of man at his pettiest, a friend came along and placed one more book in his lap, and that book was the antidote for a 19-year-old kid still in love with idealism. And while our producer was inspired by this book, he was also shown his first glimpse of what real evil looks like. Not the usual evil most people think of, especially in our current degenerate age. No, because ladies and gentlemen, we are looking closer to the root. If you can guess the book we're using for our example before our ending commentary, good for you. But if not, don't fret. We'll give you a breakdown after the scene. Now, the scene that's about to take place is toward the end of the book, when the personification of evil drops his mask of civility on one of his victims, which he no longer needs. His victim, Peter, has just committed the ultimate betrayal against the hero of the story, another man named Howard. Now, we hope you can see the danger signs without us having to point them out in such an obvious manner that it causes this channel to slide down into earthside affairs of war, greed, and politics. We understand those feelings all too well, because we have succumbed to those emotions too in the past, even to the point of working on several political interests. But that was the past. Today, things are different. Today, we say thanks, but no thanks, because when dealing with evil, it's easy to get lost in one of its spiral tentacles of distraction about the latest tragedy and current bullshit of the day. And we refuse to acknowledge that refried, hot-ass mess. This channel, like our producer's energy vibrational rate, must remain hot, and yet you need to know what earthside evil looks like. So this video is here for your continuing education.
You make me sick, said Tui.
God, how you make me sick? All you hypocritical sentimentalists. You go along with me, you spout what I teach you, you profit by it. But you haven't the grace to admit to yourself what you're doing. You turn green when you see the truth. I suppose that's in the nature of your natures, and that's precisely my chief weapon, but God, I get tired of it. I must allow myself a moment free of you. That's why I have to put on an act for all my life, for mean, little average people like you. To protect your sensibilities, your posturings, your conscience, and the peace of the mind you haven't got. That's the price I pay for what I want, but at least I know that I've got to pay it. I have no illusions about the price or the purchase.
What do you want, Ellsworth?
Power, Petey.
There were steps in the apartment above, someone skipping gaily, a few sounds on the ceiling, as the 4x5 tap beats. The light fixture jingled, and Keating's head moved up in obedience. Then it came back to Tui. Tui was smiling, almost indifferently. You always said. Keating began and stopped.
I've always said just that. Clearly, precisely, and openly. It's not my fault if you couldn't hear. You could, of course. You didn't want to. Which was safer than deafness for me. I said I intended to rule, like all my spiritual predecessors. But I'm luckier than they were. I inherited the fruit of their efforts, and I shall be the one who'll see the great dream made real. I see it all around me today. I recognize it. I don't like it. I didn't expect to like it. Enjoyment is not my destiny. I shall find such satisfaction as my capacity permits. I shall rule. Whom? You. The world. It's only a matter of discovering the lever. If you learn how to rule one single man's soul, you can get the rest of mankind. It's the soul, Peter, the soul. Not whips or swords or fire or guns. That's why the Caesars, the Attilas, the Napoleons were fools and did not last. We will. So, Peter, is that which can't be ruled. It must be broken. Drive a wedge in. Get your fingers on it. And the man is yours. You won't need a whip. He'll bring it to you and ask to be whipped. Set him in reverse, and his own mechanism will do your work for you. Use him against himself. Want to know how it's done? See if I ever lied to you. See if you haven't heard all this for years, but didn't want to hear. And the fault is yours, not mine. There are many ways. Here's one. Make man feel small. Make him feel guilty. Kill his aspiration and his integrity. That's difficult. The worst among you gropes for an idol in his own twisted way. Kill integrity by internal corruption. Use it against himself. Direct it towards a goal destructive of all integrity. Preach selflessness. Tell men that altruism is the ideal. Not a single one has ever reached it, and not a single one ever will. His every living instinct screams against it. But don't you see what you accomplish? Man realizes that he's incapable of what he's accepted as the noblest virtue, and it gives him a sense of guilt, of sin, of his own basic unworthiness. Since the supreme ideal is beyond his grasp, he gives up eventually all ideals, all aspiration, all sense of his personal value. He feels himself obliged to preach what he can't practice. But one can't be good halfway or honest approximately. To preserve one's integrity is a hard battle. Why preserve that which one knows to be corrupt already? His soul gives up its self-respect. You've got him. He'll obey. He'll be glad to obey, because he can't trust himself. He feels uncertain. He feels unclean. That's one way. Here's another. Kill man's sense of values. Kill his capacity to recognize greatness or to achieve it. Great men can't be ruled. We don't want any great man. Don't deny conception of greatness. Destroy it from within. The great is the rare, the difficult, the exceptional. Set up standards of achievement open to all, to the least, to the most inept, and you stop the impetus to effort in man, great or small. You stop all incentive to improvement, to excellence, to perfection. Laugh at Rock and hold Peter kicking as a great architect. You've destroyed architecture. Build Lois Cook and you've destroyed literature. Haylight and you've destroyed the theater. Glorify Lancelot Cloaky and you've destroyed the press. Don't set out to raise all shrines. You'll frighten men, enshrine mediocrity, and the shrines are raised. Then there's another way. Kill by laughter. Laughter is an instrument of human joy. Learn to use it as a weapon of destruction. Turn it into a sneer. It's simple. Tell them to laugh at everything. Tell them that a sense of humor is an unlimited virtue. Don't let anything remain sacred in a man's soul, and his soul won't be sacred to him. Kill reverence and you've killed the hero in man. One doesn't reverence with a giggle. He'll obey and he'll set no limits to obedience. Anything goes. Nothing is too serious. Here's another way. This is most important. Don't allow man to be happy. Happiness is self-contained and self-sufficient. Happy men have no time and no use for you. Happy men are free men. So kill their joy in living. Take away from them what they want. Make them think that the mere thought of a personal desire is evil. Bring them to a state where saying I want is no longer a natural right, but a shameful admission. Altruism is of great help in this. Unhappy men will come to you. They'll need you. They'll come for consolation, for support, for escape. Nature has no vacuum. Empty man's soul, and the space is yours to fill. I don't see why you should look so shocked, Peter. This is the oldest one of all. Look back at history. Look at any great system of ethics. From the Orient up, didn't they all preach the sacrifice of personal joy? Under all the complications of verbiage, haven't they all had a single leitmotif, sacrifice, renunciation, self-denial? Haven't you been able to catch their theme song, give up, give up, give up, give up? Look at the moral atmosphere of today. Everything enjoyable, from cigarettes to sex to ambition to the profit motive, is considered depraved or sinful. Just prove that the thing makes men happy, and you've damned it. That's how far we've come. We've tied happiness to guilt, and we've got mankind by the throat. Throw your firstborn into a sacrificial furnace. Lie on a bed of nails. Go into the desert to mortify the flesh. Don't dance. Don't go to the movies on Sunday. Don't try to get rich, don't smoke, don't drink. It's all the same line. The great line. Fools don't think that taboos of this nature are just nonsense, something left over old-fashioned. But there's always a purpose in nonsense. Don't bother to examine folly. Ask yourself only what it accomplishes. Every system of ethics that preached sacrifice grew into a world power and ruled millions of men. Of course, you must dress them up. You must tell people they'll achieve a superior kind of happiness by giving up everything that makes them happy. You don't have to be too clear about it. Use big vague words. Universal harmony, the eternal spirit, divine purpose, nirvana, paradise, racial supremacy, the dictatorship of the proletariat, internal corruption, Peter. That's the oldest one of all. The farce has been going on for centuries and men still fall for it. Yet the test should be so simple, just listen to any prophet and if you hear him speak of sacrifice, run. Run faster than from a plague. It stands to reason that where there's sacrifice, there's someone collecting sacrificial offerings. Where there's service, there's someone being served. The man who speaks to you of sacrifice speaks of slaves and masters, and intends to be master. But if you ever hear a man telling you that you must be happy, that it's your natural right, that your first duty is to yourself, that will be a man who has nothing to gain from you. But let him come and you'll scream your empty heads off, howling that he's a selfish monster. So the racket is safe for May centuries. But here you might have noticed something. I said, it stands to reason. Do you see? Men have a weapon against you, reason. So you must be very sure to take it away from them. Cut the props from under it. But be careful. Don't deny outright. Never deny anything outright. You give your hand away. Don't say reason is evil. Those who have gone that far and with astonishing success. Just say that reason is limited. That there's something above it. What? You don't have to be too clear about that either. The feels inexhaustible. Instinct, feeling, revelation, divine intuition, dialectic materialism. If you get caught at some crucial point and somebody tells you that your doctrine doesn't make sense, you're ready for him. You tell him there's something above sense. That here he must not try to think. He must feel. He must believe. Suspend reason and you play it deuces wild. Anything goes in any manner you wish whenever you need it. You've got him. Can you rule a thinking man? We don't want any thinking man. Keating had sat down on the floor, by the side of the dresser. He did not want to abandon the dresser. He felt safer, leaning against it. Peter, you've heard all this. You've seen me practicing it for 10 years. You see it being practiced all over the world. Why are you disgusted? You have no right to sit there and stare at me with the virtuous superiority of being shocked. You're in on it. You've taken your share, and you've got to go along. You're afraid to see where it's leading. I'm not. I'll tell you. The world of the future. The world I want. A world of obedience and of unity. A world where the thought of each man will not be his own, but an attempt to guess the thought of the next neighbor who will have no thought, and so on, Peter, round the globe. Since all must agree with all, a world where no man will hold a desire for himself, but will direct all his efforts to satisfy the desires of his neighbor who will have no desires except to satisfy the desires of the next neighbor, who will have no desires around the globe, Peter. Since all must have all, a world in which man will not work for so innocent an incentive as money, but for that headless monster, prestige, the approval of his fellows, their good opinion, the opinion of man who'll be allowed to hold no opinion, an octopus, all tentacles and no brain, judgment, Peter, not judgment, but public polls, an average drawn upon zeros, since no individuality will be permitted. A world with its motor cut off and a single heart, pumped by hand, my hand, and the hands of a very few other men like me. Those who know what makes you tick, you great, wonderful average. You who have not risen in fury when we called you the average, the little, the common, you who've lied and accepted these names. You'll sit enthroned and enshrined. You, the little people, the absolute ruler to make all past rulers squirm with envy. The absolute, The unlimited, God and prophet and king combined. Vox populi. The average, the common, the general. Do you know the proper antonym for ego? Bromide, Peter. The rule of the bromide. But even the trite has to be organized by someone at some time. We'll do the organizing. Vox Dei. We'll enjoy unlimited submission from men who've learned nothing except to submit. We'll call it to serve. We'll give out medals for service. You'll fall over one another in a scrabble to see who can submit better and more. There will be no other distinction to seek, no other form of personal achievement. Can you see how it works in this picture? No? Then don't waste time on foolish questions. Everything that can't be ruled must go. And if freaks persist in being born occasionally, they will not survive beyond their 12th year. When their brain begins to function, it will feel the pressure, and it will explode. The pressure gauge to a vacuum. You know the fate of deep-sea creatures brought out to sunlight. So much for future rocks. The rest of you will smile and obey. Have you noticed that the imbecile always smiles? Man's first frown is the first touch of God on his forehead. The touch of thought. But we'll have neither God nor thought. Only voting by smiles. Automatic levers all saying yes. Now if you were a little more intelligent, like your ex-wife for instance, you'd ask, what of us the rule is? What of me, Ellsworth, Monk&Tilly? And I'd say, yes, you're right. I'll achieve no more than you will. I'll have no purpose save to keep you contented. To lie, to flatter you, to praise you, to inflate your vanity, to make speeches about people and the common good. Peter, my poor friend, I'm the most selfless man you've ever known. I have less independence than you. Who am I just forced to sell your soul? You've used people at least for the sake of what you could get from them for yourself. I want nothing for myself. I use people for the sake of what I can do to them. It's my only function and satisfaction. I have no private purpose. I want power. I want my world of the future. Let all live for all. Let all sacrifice and none profit. Let all suffer and none enjoy. Let progress stop. Let all stagnate. There's equality in stagnation. All subjugated to the will of all. Universal slavery without even the dignity of a master. Slavery to slavery. A great circle and a total equality. The world of the future.
Keating looked up at Terry. Ellsworth, you're insane?
Afraid to say it. There you sit and the word is written all over you. Your last hope. Insane? Look around you. Pick up any newspaper and read the headlines. Isn't it coming? Isn't it here? Every single thing I told you? Isn't your up swallowed already and we're stumbling on to follow? Everything I said is contained in a single word, collectivism. And isn't that the god of our century? To act together, to think together, to feel together, to unite, to agree, to obey, to serve, to sacrifice, divide and conquer first, but then unite and rule. We've discovered that one at last. Remember the Roman emperor who said he wished humanity had a single leg so he could cut it. People have laughed at him for centuries. But we'll have the last laugh. We've accomplished what he couldn't accomplish. We've taught men to unite. This makes one neck ready for one leash. We've found the magic word. Collectivism. Look at Europe, you fool. Can't you see past the guff and recognize the essence? One country is dedicated to the proposition that man has no rights, that the collective is all. The individual held as evil, the mass as God. No motive and no virtue permitted, except that of service to the proletariat. That's one version. Here's another. A country dedicated to the proposition that man has no rights, that the state is all. The individual held as evil, the race as God. No motive and no virtue permitted, except that of service to the race. Am I raving or is this the harsh reality of the continents already? If you're sick of one version, we push you in the other. We've fixed the coin. Heads, collectivism. Tails, collectivism. Give up your soul to a council, or give it up to a leader. But give it up, give it up, give it up. Offer poison as food and poison as antidote. Go fancy on the trimmings, but hang on to the main objective. Give the fools a choice. Let them have their fun, but don't forget the only purpose you have to accomplish. Kill the individual. Kill man's soul. The rest will follow automatically.
And now, commentary. To begin, let's go over the book that inspired this video. The Fountainhead is a novel by Ayn Rand, first published in 1943. It is a story about the struggle of an individual to achieve greatness in the face of widespread mediocrity and conformity. The main character of the novel is Howard Rourke, an architect who refuses to compromise his artistic vision in the face of pressure from clients, critics, and the general public. Rourke is a man of strong convictions and is unwilling to compromise his principles for anyone or anything. He is determined to succeed on his own terms, even if it means facing ridicule, rejection, and financial hardship. Throughout the novel, Rourke's struggles are contrasted with those of his rival, Peter Keating, who is willing to conform and compromise in order to succeed. Keating, who is initially envious of Rourke's talent and independence, eventually becomes successful by conforming to the standards of the architectural establishment. However, Rourke's refusal to compromise ultimately leads to his triumph, as he is able to build a monument that embodies his artistic vision and inspires others to pursue their own goals with integrity. The Fountainhead is a celebration of individualism and the creative spirit, and it advocates for the value of integrity and self-reliance. It is a thought-provoking and enduring work that continues to be widely read and debated to this day. And what about the character of Ellsworth Toohey? Ellsworth Toohey is a prominent figure in the architectural world who uses his wit and charm to manipulate and control others. Toohey is a socialist and a collectivist, and he seeks to use his influence to shape society according to his own vision. Toohey is a complex and multifaceted character who is both admired and feared by those around him. On the surface, he appears to be a charming and likable individual who is always willing to lend a helping hand. However, beneath this facade lies a manipulative and cynical mind that is dedicated to advancing his own agendas. Toohey is deeply envious of Howard Rourke, the novel's main character, and is determined to bring him down. He sees Rourke as a threat to his own power and influence by just existing, and Toohey uses every opportunity to undermine and discredit him. Rourke never confronts Toohey. In fact, in Howard Rourke's reality, the Ellsworth Tooheys of the world don't exist, just like the ants under your home don't exist to you. And in the one brief exchange they had, Ellsworth proudly confesses that it was he who caused Rourke to be sued and the loss of Rourke's business, and challenges Howard to a confrontation. Rourke only says one thing to Ellsworth, and that was, "But I don't think of you," end quote. Despite to his best efforts, he is unable to defeat Rourke, but overall represents the dangers of conformity and collectivism, since Toohey is the personification of evil in the novel. Toohey's character is portrayed as a socialist and collectivist who seeks to undermine individualism and individual achievement, or what we call on this channel self-development. Make a mental note of that. Ellsworth is a manipulative and devious character who uses his influence as a newspaper columnist, an architectural critic, to try to shape society in a way that he believes will benefit the collective. He is depicted as a complex character with his own motivations and beliefs, but that's just the civilization needed to make a good character. His essence is pure evil and malevolent. Why? Because Toohey can't create anything on his own, and he knows it. So he becomes a black hole that needs to feed on the souls of others in order to exist. And do you watching this video right now know of anyone who's a living black hole? Evil is the force that disturbs our path of self-development. Evil is collective thinking under any ism you like. Why? Because the group, the collective, just like the people, is an abstraction. There is no such thing as collective, just like there is no such thing as leaves on a tree. In reality, it's leaf number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on. And then some smartass, like Aristotle, comes along and ties them all together as leaves. But the term leaves is an abstraction, just like the term the people is an abstraction, and the idea of the public is an abstraction as well. But what about you? Are you an abstraction? And what about evil? Is it an abstraction? What if it is? What if evil is the ever-evolving effort to supplant the real with the abstract? It is then antithetical to self-development and all the mind sciences, because there is no liberation inside a herd. Those with ears, let them hear. And until next time, self-love is the best love.